Blog Talk Radio.
We'll never see you again.
I dearly hope so, my prince. There is so much more I meant to tell you. Everything you know is about to change.
American Daily Review.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not too long ago, two friends of mine were talking to a Cuban refugee, a businessman who had escaped from Castro. And in the midst of his story, one of my friends turned to the other and said, "We don't know how lucky we are." And the Cuban stopped and said, "How lucky you are. I had some place to escape to." And in that sentence, he told us the entire story. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance.
When America needed them most, two men rose to the occasion. Doug Gibbs of Constitution Radio and PoliticalPistachio.com. Jasmius of PoliticalPistachio.com, Constitution Radio, and the Hard Starboard Radio Network. This is American Daily Review on blogtalkradio.com.
270 at 30 knots, holding steady at 15,000 feet. You are cleared for exfiltration over the drop zone.
to another edition of American Daily Review at blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review, a production of the Hard Starboard Radio Network. Airing Saturdays, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. It is the kickoff and first 2 hours of the 3-hour Saturday afternoon extravaganza, which is only going to be a little over 2 hours today because I had to pick up my father at the hospital emergency room, and I just got back from there, and he's fine. It's just the same catheter problems that he's had for ever since last summer. So this is like the third or fourth month in a row that he's had the catheter plug up, and so the urine backs up, and it's a miserable existence. But it's still probably in the high end of the nuisance category. But I am talking to him about, hey, Dad, there is a procedure you can do where maybe you could pee again, and he says, well, I can't get up to get to the toilet in time. Hey, Dad, I would rather wear Depends 24/7 than have a catheter shoved up my schwanz. So that's just me. But and I'm not gonna try to push him into anything. He will. I said, that's up to you, Dad. I mean, I don't know if I'd want to keep having to go to the emergency room every month. But we shall see what transpires from that. Anyway. Truncated American Daily Review today. Constitution Radio will air at its normal time, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, on KMET1490am.com. And I got a call from Douglas V. Gibbs, America's Constitution Authority, earlier this morning, that he would be calling into the program maybe 30 to 45 minutes into it. Well, we started about that much into it. Don't see him in the queue. I want to get this, because we got a lot of stories today, and I want to get this monologue in. Fortunately, most of the stories are pretty brief, so I think there's room for this monologue, which I know I'm not going to have any chance to get it in on Constitution Radio, so I want to get it in here. Guest call on number 646-595-4520. Chat room is open. And, of course, my email address and the source for all past editions, all past podcasts of Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, jasmius@comcast.net. Specify the dates. I'll be happy to send them to you. Now, until Donald Trump changed the subject to punishing women for having abortions, the Trump obsession of the week was Michelle Fields. The former Breitbart political reporter who got manhandled by Donald Trump's campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, bruised her forearm, and then Lewandowski had initially admitted it, and then Trump got hold of him and said, no, you got to fight back, because Trump's the biggest bully I've ever seen, biggest bully in the history of American politics. And so Lewandowski changed his story and said, "Oh, I never touched her. I never came anywhere near her. She's making it all up. She's delusional." And then it's deteriorated to the point where Trump is threatening file criminal charges against her, against Michelle Fields, and accusing her of having a pen bomb and just ridiculous foolishness. Because of course. Accountability and owning one's actions and accepting responsibility, well, that's weak. That's not strength. That's weakness. That's beta male stuff. Donald Trump doesn't do beta male stuff. He doesn't accept responsibility. He's always right. He always wins. Now, I'm glad the story is no, the story isn't gone, but without rehashing the whole thing again with reference to frame-by-frame analysis, Oh, by the way, the photographic evidence proves that Lewandowski ragdolled Michelle Fields. The video evidence supports it. There's eyewitness testimony. Ben Terrace of the Washington Post, who was standing 2 feet away, saw the whole thing. And, of course, the pictures of the bruises on her arm seems kind of, like I say, incontrovertible, open and shut. It's the kind of thing where if Lewandowski had just kept his hands to himself, first of all, or failing that, immediately apologized, said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I got carried away. I just probably nothing would have come from it." But the way that Trump Inc. works, that pissed Michelle Fields off, and so, yeah, she filed misdemeanor battery charges. And the Jupiter, Florida local police department didn't dismiss them because there was evidence. I mean, in other words, this has become as big a thing as it has because of Donald Trump. You know, Trump could have diffused this, and Lewandowski could have diffused it. He admitted it. Immediately in the first couple of days after it happened. And then Trump got in his ear and said, no, you got to fight back. So then he started recanting it and lying about it and smearing Michelle Fields. And, of course, Breitbart, which is Trump Pravda, didn't stick up for her either. And so she quit, and Ben Shapiro quit along with her in solidarity with her. But it's become as big a thing as it has because of Trump. Because Trump is never wrong. Trump never gives any ground. He always fight. Well, sometimes you're wrong, and you need to own it. And Donald Trump's not capable of doing that. Now, without rehashing the whole thing, which I pretty much did, I'm practicing for later on today on KMET, with reference to frame-by-frame analysis best left for the Zapruder film, let me just say, I think all of the important and relevant facts are on Michelle Fields' side. There's audio of her describing what happened immediately after the Corey Lewandowski incident. There are the bruises captured on film. There's video, and there are eyewitness accounts, all of which corroborate the basic story Fields has been telling. To listen to Trump's and Lewandowski's defenders, this is all a big lie, the upshot being that you can include Doug in that category, too, based on his post at politicalpistachio.com yesterday. The upshot being that Fields invented the whole story in a deviously clever conspiracy to trade her job at Breitbart and her regular gig on Eric Bolling's show for something so much better. Indeed, I think her plan went something like this. Step 1, ask Donald Trump about affirmative action while he's walking out of a press conference. Step 2, walk in just such a way to dupe Corey Lewandowski into putting his hands on her. Step 3, pretend that he grabbed too hard, convincing eyewitnesses on scene that something bad happened. Step 4, bruise her own arm and take a picture of it. Step 5, ask for an apology from the Trump campaign, which is like asking Trump to create a boulder too heavy for him to lift. Step 6, wait for her own news organization to throw her under the bus and then quit her job. And Step 7, wait for the checks to roll in. Yeah, entirely plausible, isn't it? Still, what happened to Fields, it was not Kristallnacht, and Lewandowski should not, I don't really care, frankly, stand trial. Well, he will or he won't. And if the evidence supports it, then he will. This is, again, another one of those things where Trump could have diffused this. It's gotten to this point because of Trump being Trump. He never owns anything, always fight back, even if he's wrong, which Lewandowski was. And so Trump has Lewandowski doubling down on it. I mean, it would have been a very simple thing to diffuse, but Trump had to do what he always does, and so that pissed Michelle Fields off, and so now she filed misdemeanor battery charges. Whether it'll go to trial, I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the whole thing would have been over without any of us having heard a word about it if Lewandowski had any common sense or decency and apologized for overreacting and throwing Fields an interview with, he could have thrown her an interview with Trump to make amends. It could have been diffused. It didn't have to get to this point. The only reason it did was because of Donald Trump. Because of who he is and what he has been his entire adult life. 40 years on the national stage. This is Trump, folks. He can't change. He's never changed. This is who he is. But observing common courtesy and civility is not what not what Donald Trump does. And that's the real issue here. Donald Trump and his campaign take great pride in overturning the basic rules of politics and democratic discourse, small d, Republican discourse, small r. For those who want to see the establishment, however defined, torn down, this bull in a china shop stuff is celebrated. Trump's fans ascribe a brilliance to his actions that is wholly undeserved. Breaking the rules in ways large and small is seen as self-justifying in every case. Or almost every case. This week, there have been some cracks in the facade. Trump's attacks on Heidi Cruz unsettled even Ann Coulter. Yeah, that's some unsettling right there. And his abortion remarks are still sending tremors through the granite foundations of Trump can-do-no-wrongism. Joe Scarborough and Breitbart's John Nolte, John Nolte, the guy who wished every never-Trumper to burn to death in a fire this week, John Nolte, are talking about what a bad week he's having and gravely warning Trump to get his act together. As Jim Garrity has been writing, the problem with such second thoughts is the assumption that something is amiss with Trump or his campaign. But that's really not the issue. That's really not the point. This is Trump. This is his campaign. The Trump we see before us is the same Trump that's always been before us. It's a bit like Barack Obama said, or when Barack Obama said that Jeremiah Wright he saw denouncing America wasn't the man he knew. That was nonsense. Obama knew exactly who Jeremiah Wright was, having attended his church for 20 years. It was only when Wright's act moved to a larger national stage that all of a sudden he became inconvenient to Obama. Now, the analogy isn't perfect, of course, but the basic point is the same. The Donald Trump of the last week is the exact same Donald Trump many of us saw a year ago, 5 years ago, 10, 20, 30 years ago. He's always been full of shit. He's always been a total ignoramus when it comes to public policy, lacking the simple sense of patriotic duty to do his homework on the issues. He's always been a nasty and boorish cad. He's always pretended to be a conservative while working on liberal assumptions of what conservatives want to hear. His punish the women comments about abortion were of a piece with his refusal to condemn the Klan on CNN. It's not that he wants to punish women who have abortions. I'd bet he's paid more abortion bills than he will ever sign. It's that he thinks that's what pro-lifers want to hear. It's not that he's a Klansman or the pillowcases of Mar-a-Lago come with eye holes cut out in advance. It's that Trump thinks lots of his fans like the Klan and he wants to pander to them. I've heard firsthand stories from people who work with Trump about how he disparages women. Disparages women's appearance routinely. That's who he is. If you're attacking him because he retweeted a bad picture of Heidi Cruz, that's not you being principled. That's, if you're a shocked Trump supporter, that's you getting cold feet. That's buyer's remorse. Indeed, I'm sure that the same opportunism that has caused so many supposed principled conservatives to hitch their wagons to Trump is now causing some of them to question their choices, not because Trump has changed, but because the climate might be changing around them. By all means, if Trump continues to unravel, and that's a huge if, please abandon Trump. But don't think for a moment that the rest of us will automatically take your word for it when you say this or that statement changed your mind about the man. He hasn't changed. Your calculations have. But can I go back to Michelle Fields for a moment? I think that whole affair was really instructive. Trump is a master of a kind of passive aggression, though it can often just seem like plain old aggression. When caught in a lie, Trump doesn't merely stick to the lie, he enlarges it. Not only did Lewandowski do nothing wrong, he saved Trump from an assault. That pen could have been a bomb. A bomb! Remember when he suggested a protester who charged the stage was with ISIS? Because the truth isn't enough. Even if he's telling the truth, well, that's not enough. It's got to be embellished even more. Because he's Trump. By embracing and enlarging the lie, Trump gives his most ardent fans no escape. They must either fall in line with yet another comfortable story about how their leader is both supremely right and a victim of deceit, or open themselves up to the possibility that this one instance of deception and boorishness isn't unique but utterly representative, which it is. I think many of us have known people like this. Inveterate liars and other kinds of sociopaths test the limit of polite society. They break the implicit bargain that says you can get away with lying only so long as everyone agrees not to notice. Obvious lies are insults because they rest on the assumption that the person being lied to is either too stupid to recognize the lie or too weak to say anything about it. In this sense, Trump has been insulting his biggest supporters from day one. We've all had dinner parties or family gatherings ruined by that oaf who refuses to bend to simple politeness, which gives me an idea here. Yeah, there we go. They force polite people to either swallow small or large insults for the sake of civility. Oh, I didn't want to make a huge deal about it because it would just have made things worse, is a rationalization we've given voice to on the drive home. Trump is doing this on a massive scale. Like all demagogues, he's using his lies as a loyalty test for his followers. He's exploiting his popularity and abusing the devotion of his fans to force them into going along with his fictions until they are in so deep psychologically they have no choice but to carry on. It's an ancient psychological tactic of authoritarians, mafia dons, and the like. Force your followers into sharing the blame for your misdeeds so that they can't break ranks. For instance, when Trump was caught saying something typically ignorant about abortion, he told Eric Bolling that MSNBC cut out the nuance of what he really said. Oh, you really ought to hear the whole thing, Trump told guest host Eric Bolling. This is a long, convoluted question. This was a long discussion, and they just cut it out. And frankly, it was extremely convoluted. Of course, Trump knows that MSNBC ran the clip in its entirety, and Bolling probably does too. But I'm sure that if I went on Twitter and said Trump lied about his comments being edited, within minutes I'd hear from people saying, no, MSNBC edited him. Or, of course you rhinos would believe MSNBC. I'll also be interested to see if Bolling says anything about the fact that Donald Trump blatantly lied to him. But I won't hold my breath.
This line is for ticket holders only, please. Ticket holders
All right,
only.
move it. Look out. Hey, I'm cutting in front here. Coming through.
You can't do that.
Yeah, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
I'm an obnoxious butthead.
Oh, he's a butthead. Oh, sorry.
Yes, you know them well. In fact, you encounter them every day.
Hey! You just parked in front of my driveway! What are you, a butthead? Yeah! Oh, sorry! I'll just back out over my lawn.
We call them buttheads, but they're actually the unfortunate victims of cranial rectosis, a condition which causes people to lose all feeling for others simply because their head is jammed up their... Well, you get the picture.
Excuse me, but this is a no-smoking section.
So, what are you gonna do about it, cupcake?
Don't do anything. He's a terminal butthead. A public service reminder from the Committee to Replace Lab Animals with Buttheads.
Story number 17, the Casino Royale of Environmentalism. And this was a piece in Forbes magazine that pointed out what I've been saying for years on this program and on Hard Starboard Radio and on Constitution Radio and been writing about for years at politicalpistachio.com, at hardstarboardblog.com before that. And that is that green energy equals no energy. Green extremists are not for one form of energy, one source of energy over another. They are anti-energy, period. And this piece of Forbes magazine, it's another example. Hey, Jasmius Echo Syndrome in Forbes magazine. It's pretty heady stuff. Would be if I was getting paid for it. Here's a quote from Forbes magazine. Why does the green movement oppose every practical form of energy? Well, there's only one answer that can explain this. Greens oppose every practical form of energy not out of love for the non-existent virtues of solar or wind, but because they believe practical energy is inherently immoral. It's in their philosophical DNA. To be green means to minimize our impact on nature. In the green philosophy, the standard of value, the metric by and which we measure good and bad is human non-impact. Does an action make our environment more or less altered by humans? If we take that idea seriously, then practical energy is not a good thing. In other words, green extremism is a pagan, humanophobic religion in which human beings themselves, us, are the devil, aside from the green extremists themselves, of course. Nature is God, Gaia, and consequently, for evil to be defeated and destroyed, Homo sapiens must be rendered extinct, except for the green extremists, of course. I mean, Tom Clancy's first Rainbow Six novel was about precisely that. This green extremist group came up with an engineered virus that would wipe out every human being on Earth except for them. Why? Because human beings were Agent Smith. Remember that scene from Agent Smith in the first Matrix picture? Human beings are a plague, a disease of this planet, and we are the cure. That's what they try to do. That's what green extremists believe, that human beings are somehow not part of nature. I mean, if you were from an environmentalist perspective, isn't it a given that human beings are part of nature? If we evolved on this planet, then they seem to have a problem with sentience and intelligence, which inevitably means changing the environment to suit the dominant species. Well, environmentalists, green extremists have a problem with that. I mean, the source of energy doesn't matter. The green extremists are against all of it. Fossil fuels are dirty. Nuclear fission is contaminative. But then windmills kill birds by the thousands, and a full-blown Dyson sphere to harvest solar energy would no doubt clutter up the inner solar system with man's trash, upsetting nature's cosmic balance or some other such nonsense. Nuclear fusion will produce energy in abundance once we solve the technological hurdles using nothing but water as fuel and helium as exhaust. What could be cleaner, right? But the green extremists, about 25 years ago, I think is when they thought they were getting close to cold fusion. The green extremists still balked even at that and said no. Here was a quote from the LA Times, late 80s, early 90s. The piece was called Fear of Fusion. Now, there are some quotes from this story, the LA Times, called Fear of Fusion. What if it works? Or Fear of Fusion. What if it works? Leading environmentalist Jeremy Rifkin said it's the worst thing that could happen to our planet. Notice he said our planet. It'd be good for us. Terrible for the planet. Because, of course, they think that those two things are opposed to each other. Paul Ehrlich. Remember Paul Ehrlich, the guy who back in the 70s said that we're going to run out of all vital minerals and we're going to run out of oil by the year 2000. Remember that? Think about that when you're going down to get gas in your car today with $2 gasoline. Paul Ehrlich said developing fusion for human beings would be like giving a machine gun to an idiot child. Amory Lovins was already on record as saying, quote, complex technology of any sort is an assault on human dignity? So it's more dignified to live in caves? It would be little short of disastrous for us to discover a source of clean, cheap, abundant energy because of what we might do with it. Like heat our homes, run our power plants, generate electricity, be a modern technological civilization, expand out into space, colonize other planets, colonize the moon, colonize Mars, become a multi-planet species, even one day go to the stars. And that's the worst thing for the planet. It's an assault, complex technology of any sort, an assault on human dignity, because apparently being primitive, filth-ridden, pestilence and pustule covered and infected and having, look here I'm looking at 4 graphs. One shows CO2 emissions. The others show gross domestic product per person or per capita, prosperity, life expectancy, and population. They all, over the past 2,000 years, they all skyrocket right about the time of the Industrial Revolution. How is greater life expectancy and prosperity a bad thing? Well, to everybody else, it's not. Green extremists, it is. That's why green extremists are the plague on this planet. Okay. I seem to have attracted a crowd again. That's just regularly checking in and seeing if there's any kind of update. So, might as well get busy.
I am Douglas V. Gibbs, and I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men, and free men you are. What will you do with that freedom? Will you fight? Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your bed many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
In every revolution, there's one man with a vision.
Perhaps today is a good day.
Douglas V. Gibbs.
He's the one.
How's your audio this week?
Well, let's hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Do I sound better than last week?
About the same.
Oh, crap.
Well, I mean, it wasn't terrible last week. It's just not as good as it was with the other soundboard.
Yeah, well, what was terrible during that first 15, 20 minutes?
Well, it's
not
not
that bad,
not
right?
that bad. No. I mean, I'm referring to what you got it up to.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, it's fair to middle it
Okay.
on that scale.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, that's better than completely crappy, so I'll go with it.
Yeah. You take what you can get. I'm just moving on to story number 16, and a lot of these are really...
Yeah, I noticed that. There's not enough time really this morning. You and I both had our own situations going on.
Yeah, well, my dad's fine. It's just his monthly catheter backup, so had a UTI, and so he's back home. So.
Okay, story number 16: gun violence never dies. Well, it's funny because as you were writing about how gun-free Chicago is on track for their murder rate being higher than ever before in astronomical levels, nationally we're watching gun violence and violent crime go down as gun ownership goes up. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there does seem to be a direct thing. It does seem to be a direct relationship between the two. I had this theory in Chicago. They're on a pace for 540 homicides.
So what you're saying is it's more dangerous to live in Chicago than it is to go to war in Afghanistan or Iraq.
Yeah, I have this theory that when the city of Chicago confiscates the last legal gun, the last resident of Chicago will be shot and killed. I mean, that's the relationship. I mean, the more they confiscate guns, the more gun violence they have. It's not arguable. In the exact same way that gun violence goes down, the more people are armed. Simple psychology, really.
Okay. No, that's all we got to say about that. Next, wait a second. Now, this morning, one of the reasons why I was at the Corona Tea Party as a speaker, who's a friend of mine and a member of the Constitution Association, is an NRA certified gun safety instructor. Mm-hmm. And she was telling me this story about how, when she does these classes, 99.9% of people out there don't know jack when it comes to a firearm. They say silly things like weapon instead of firearm. Well, the military have weapons because weapons are there to, kill the enemy.
A baseball bat could be a weapon.
Yeah, well, in your case, as a law-abiding gun owner, it's a firearm because you're not, out to kill. You're out to defend yourself. There's,
Right.
Yeah, unless the militia needs to be called into active duty, that's a different story. Or people like to talk about their clip. They've got all these bullets in the clip. And what they're referring to, it's like the California legislatures want to limit how the size of your clip. Well, that's fine. Just don't limit the size of my magazine. The magazine is what has the bullets in it, as clip is something external.
I love that. They have no idea of the nomenclature, and yet they hold themselves out as being the experts on it, which pretty much describes the left on any issue.
Well, this is true. Anyway, so she's telling me about how she teaches these classes, and we have different people who come into her class. And one time she has this woman who's got her arms crossed and a frown on her face. And it turns out, when she asks her, what is it that brought you to class? And she says, oh, my friend talked me into it. I believe all guns are dangerous, and gun control needs to be pushed as hard as we can push it. And then she commented to Amber about all the guns on the table and says, do those have to be here? Is that necessary? It says, yes, it is necessary. I'm not going to have to touch one of mine. I said, no, not if you don't want to. You don't have to touch the gun. Then an hour later, when they got to the part of the class where we're going to handle the guns, that woman jumped up out of her seat and was one of the first ones who wanted to handle a firearm. And by the end of the class, she had changed her mind about firearms because, as she told Amber, well, I just didn't know.
Yep, there you go.
And so I was thinking about this during my drive over here to the studio. What's the best way to stop gun shootings? Start gun safety classes taught by NRA instructors in our public school system.
Well, yeah, like it used to be 50 or 60 years ago.
Absolutely. All right. Story 15, Millennials and Reality Skyfall. They're getting mugged by reality. That's great. I like that title. That was good. Mine was A Misguided Desire for Socialism. And then the other one was Can Bernie Catch Hillary? But in all of these stories, we're finding that the millennials, they think they want socialism, but you know what? They really don't understand what socialism is. And my favorite was a link from last week, actually. Millennials love socialism until they get a job.
Well, that
was, I think, Washington Post, was it?
Yeah, Washington Post. I mean, I love some of the quotes in this story, like the expanded social welfare state Bernie Sanders thinks the United States should adopt requires everyday people to pay considerably more in taxes. Yet millennials become averse to social welfare spending if they have to foot the bill. As they reach the threshold of earning $40,000 to $60,000 a year, the majority of millennials come to oppose income redistribution, including raising taxes to increase financial assistance to the poor. I mean, the bottom line is the millennials are no different than any previous generation. In fact, you can trace it. Baby boomers supported big government and higher taxes in pretty much the same proportions as millennials have back when they were young punks, and then as they got more of a stake in the capitalist system, then their appreciation for big government started dropping as soon as they had to pay for it. It's human nature. If you benefit from big government, then you're going to support it. If you have to start paying for it, you're going to turn against it.
Well, here's the story. Here's millennials that are listening, and for the rest of you, here's the story. Hey, enjoy that A, but your teacher decided they were going to do a redistribution of wealth, so you're going to get a C in the class, so the person who's getting an F and didn't put in the effort can get a C as well. It's only fair.
I can just hear the, hey, right, as we speak.
All right. Number 14, A View to a Suicide. That's because California is committing suicide, especially with its economy. Hey, automation. And so here's what happens when we raise the minimum wage. The 7 employees that were demanding $15 an hour, 6 of them are let go, replaced by an automated kiosk, and the 7th one, who is getting $15 an hour, won't be any better off in the long run because the cost of living wage will catch up. Oh, those other 6, they're in the unemployment line.
Well, not just that, but everybody else is going to cascade up the wage scale. Everybody else.
Absolutely. What it does is it destroys the middle class. It forces the middle class down lower into closer to poverty. What this does is it creates 2 classes, the haves and the have-nots. So the very thing that the Democrats accuse the Republicans of being is what they are creating with this massive jump of minimum wage.
And they're trying to do it in New York. Haven't quite gotten there yet. But California, the fact that was it passed. It cleared the California legislature toward the end of this week, so they've got the $15 minimum wage statewide, and I was tempted. My headline was California's fight for automation and even worse unemployment. I could have used huge job surge about to hit Oregon, Nevada, and Arizona.
Or you could have been, California wants to be Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened. I talked about
How many businesses have left?
Oh, God, who knows? I haven't been to a Seahawk game in 3 years, so I haven't gone to the concessions area of CenturyLink Field or any of the surrounding businesses. But all I know is Seattle had its biggest rise in unemployment since 1991 in the fourth quarter of last year. At the same time, the surrounding suburbs had the biggest job the hiring surge that they'd had in roughly that same time. Like 57,000 jobs were transferred out of the city of Seattle.
So, see, businesses do something silly. Let me give you a scenario here. My wife and I went to Garden Grove to go to the theater a couple weeks ago because we were in the area. I was doing some work out there regarding Constitution Association, preparing for something. And so we're in Garden Grove, and we decided we want to go to the theater so we could go watch a movie that turned out I didn't want to see after I saw it. The humor was so juvenile, it made it a waste of a movie. You may have heard of it, Deadpool. And
yeah, that's why I didn't go see it.
What a piece of crap. But anyway, so we go up to buy our tickets, and it's $1 less than where we live. Hey, it's $1 less. That's cool. But it's assigned seating. That's fascinating. And the auditoriums don't look like they have very many seats. Fascinating. We go into the concession. Concessions is double. I mean, we pay like $16 $6 for a medium soda or $7, something like that at our theater. It was it was $15.99. It was $16 at this place for a soda. All right, I'm like, this is a rough. Can anybody afford a soda here? But anyway, then I realized when we went to the theater why the concession price is so high. They have recliners, and I mean nice recliners with a button to kick your feet out. And plenty of room in front of you, so there's less seats in each theater. And my first thought was, what is this Edwards Theater owner thinking? Now, if I have a choice between sitting in a recliner and having double concessions or paying less money and sitting in a crappy seat, I'm going to pay the less money and sit in a crappy seat.
Well, and even the seats in Cineplexes really aren't crap. They aren't crappy. I mean, they're not recliners, but you're not going to fall asleep in them, but they're not too bad. They're not too bad.
They're not horrible until that dude that's 400 pounds wants to sit next to you.
Well,
then I would prefer those big old giant recliners. But anyways, okay.
I never go into premieres, so I don't really have that problem.
Yeah, Star Wars went to the cheap theater, and I never seen so few parking spaces in the cheap theater parking lot in my life. All right, story number 13: Quantum of Hillary. SuperDelegates.
Well, that was Sheldon Silver. I can't call him. I call them SuperDuperDelegates because
why even have a primary?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's how you know that the fix is in.
I mean, I understand why the delegates are set up the way they are, and the Electoral College and all that. The delegate system is loosely based on the way the Electoral College is. And then what it is, we're not a pure democracy. So if you guys foul it up as voters, that there's a way for the more politically savvy to correct the problem. That's really what it's about. We're not supposed to be purely democratic except for when it comes to voting for a member of the House of Representatives. But on the same token, it's situated in such a way that the people's voice means something. It doesn't mean absolutely nothing. And when there's a flagrant, hey, people, we really don't give a crap how you vote, we're going to do it the way we want, message sent, then it also causes an opposite problem. And, and the system's supposed to check people are supposed to check the system, right? But this is a flagrant way of saying, hey, we just really don't give a crap what you got to say. Go ahead and vote, but it doesn't matter what you got to say. It's very flagrant, and really it's about power, and it's about who is control of the political machine, so that's one of the reasons why the superdelegate system is, well, for lack of a better way of putting it, really, really stupid.
Well, I mean, it serves its purpose, which is that the party gets the nominee that they want. I mean, Hillary Clinton has a moderate lead, and not a huge lead in earned delegates, but the super-duper delegates are like 10-1 going for her. So the other thing,
the establishment favorite.
See, the difference, really, the biggest, two biggest differences between the Democrat nominating process and that of the Republicans is that the Democrats have the super-duper delegates, and the Democrat nominating process is absolutely opaque. I mean, the Republicans tell you, okay, here are the rules. Each state has this many delegates. This is how they're apportioned. You cannot find how the Democrats do it.
Right.
It's not there.
Have you ever seen how they figure out how many delegates they have to? The formula? See, with the Republicans, it is, well, it has to do with population. So it's population plus number of representatives plus number of senators plus something else, and that's your number of delegates for your state. If you look up the Democrat, it's, well, it's this number divided by that number times this number divided by that. I mean, it looks like algebra. Well, no, it looks like something worse than algebra.
Yeah, it looks like Sheldon Cooper's whiteboard is what it looks like.
Yeah, well, exactly. Exactly.
I mean,
it's
it's bullshit is what it is. And nobody knows what kind of BS it is because, it's not supposed to be transparent. I mean, if it was, they wouldn't need the super-duper delegates.
It's DS, actually. It's donkey. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that works too.
Yeah, okay. So when we think about it that way, just remember, folks, elephants leave bigger turds. Story number 12.
Yeah, wait till we get to Karl Rove. That's the biggest one of all.
Yeah, oh boy. Okay, story number 12 for your gays only. Mississippi is going the way of Georgia, and Georgia's been. Before we get into that, remember last week we were talking about Georgia and North Carolina, and there are corporations and the NBA All-Star games that are running away from North Carolina because of their anti-gay legislation. This is how the homosexual agenda does it. It's not by culture, it's not by promotion, it's by force.
Well, sure. And now the Obama administration is making noises about cutting off federal funding to North Carolina unless and until they repeal their new.
And my response should be, okay, go for it. We just won't send you money in the first place. Cut it off.
Yeah. Go ahead. Well, yeah, I mean that's why. Because see the fiscal economic truncheon, cudgel, whatever, nightstick, sledgehammer. They know, the feds know, and obviously corporate America knows that works.
Extortion works.
Extortion works, and so that's why they use it. That's why the feds have got the states hooked on federal subsidies, federal funding for this, block grants, et cetera, et cetera. And so, with Georgia and Governor Nathan Deal, it didn't even take any level of government to do this. It was just Disney, threatening to no longer use Georgia as a movie-making site, and the NFL saying, well, we won't put Super Bowl 54 or 55 in Atlanta. And that's all it took. And that's I called it when I first wrote about it. I said, you know what? Nathan Deal is going to veto this religious liberty bill for just this reason, and he did. And now the only question I have is that Pat McCrory, the governor of North Carolina, signed this "Keep the Perverts Out of the Bathroom" bill, and I'm almost to the. I really would like to.
You know what's amazing? You know what's amazing about the left is what they're doing is they're legalizing and encouraging mental illness while calling things that are not mental illness, like Christianity, a mental illness.
Yeah,
it
sounds like the old Soviet Union, actually.
Yeah, it does, sort of. All right, story number 11, international license to kill. So let me get this straight. We have North Korea can launch nuclear nuclear missiles. Russia is expanding its nuclear arsenal. Red China is deploying, nuclear arsenal. And Iran is working on nuclear arsenals. So what we're finding out is the harder that Obama works to remove nuclear weapons from the world. Everybody's getting them except for us.
Well, I mean, the Chi-Coms have deployed the DF-41 ICBM. It's the longest range ICBM on the planet.
Holy cow!
And the Russians announced this because, see, Obama held an anti-nuke conference in Washington this week. And so isn't it interesting that at the same time, the very same week that he's hosting this anti-nuke conference, the Chinese announced they've just deployed their longest range ICBM, the longest range missile on the planet, and the Russians announced, well, yeah, we're building a whole new stockpile of multiple independently targeted reentry vehicles. Multiple nuclear weapons.
So what you're saying is every time Obama opens his mouth, the opposite happens. So when he says we're going to reduce nuclear weapons in the world, it increases. When he wants more gun control, gun sales increase. And when he says that we are going to be free from terrorist attacks, they increase. So basically, when he opens his mouth, the opposite happens.
Either that or when he goes dancing.
Story number 10: the man with the golden agreement. Obama signed the Paris climate deal because nothing says freedom like telling you how you have to use your energy.
Well, it's going to be signed April 22nd, 3 weeks from yesterday.
But it's an agreement, not a treaty, right?
It's an agreement. It's not a treaty, but he's going to enforce it anyway.
So in other words, they'll enforce it and stick it up our butt regardless of what Senate says.
Yeah, pretty much. Now the only fly in that ointment is that remember the Supreme Court a couple of months ago put a stay on the Clean Power Plan.
Well, I don't understand why. We know clean energy works so well. Just look at Solyndra. Oh, no, never mind.
Yeah. The Supreme Court put a stay on that, a hold on that, but that was I'm pretty sure before the death of Antonin Scalia.
Right.
How long do you think that stay is going to last?
And the thing is, too, is of course, Scalia makes the next vote incredible. But what people have to understand is that means it doesn't mean that the Supreme Court's not going to hear cases with only 8. What it means is we're going to get these dead ties, and if it's a tie, it goes down to the last ruling,
right.
And usually those rulings are leftist. So them having only 8 is just as well as having a 9th person be a liberal on there.
Yeah, well, on average. Yeah,
for the most part. Okay.
Yeah.
All I want to know, when are they going to start finding the windmills for killing bald eagles, American bald eagles? That's what I want.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's NIMBYism. Oh, so that's what it's always been. It's what it always will be.
All right. Story number 9, on His Majesty's final year. Now, most of this is about Obamacare, but I didn't get a chance to read your article about Obama cut Social Security. I'm assuming this has to do with Obamacare as well, because
no, actually it doesn't.
Not. No, okay.
It
I figured,
doesn't.
In order to pay for Obamacare, they're drawing money from Medicare and everything. Might as well draw from Social Security too.
Well, in the omnibus bill last fall that everybody hated, it included some Social Security cuts. Because specifically, it's something called the file and suspend rule.
Well, Social Security, is that our biggest federal expenditure?
No, Medicare is bigger, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But basically, if for a married couple, one spouse could hold off on starting to collect benefits until they were 70 and grow their benefits 8% a year before they started drawing down on them. So so that it was considered a loophole. They cut it off, and Barack Obama signed it into law as part of the omnibus bill last year. So that was, in essence, a Social Security cut, and you haven't heard anything about it, and I guarantee you the reason why is because it's Barack Obama, and he's a Democrat. If a Republican had signed any bill that contained any cut in Social Security, you would have been hearing nothing but that for the past 4 or 5 months. So I just get a kick out of it. I get a kick out of that headline.
The rates of Obamacare going sky high. Fewer employers were able to handle health insurance costs because of Obamacare.
And let's just remember, folks, the employer mandate.
Oh, yeah.
Barack Obama, by deferred by the imperial decree a year and a half, 2 years ago, and everyone's kind of forgotten about that. I mean, Obamacare is totally laid waste to the individual health insurance market, but the individual market is like 5, maybe 10% at most of overall health insurance. The vast majority of it is employer-provided group plans. Well, the employer mandate kicks in the end of this year after the election. So, and when that kicks in, that's when the you-know-what is really going to hit the fan.
Now, real quick, Obama's open borders, treason, and microcosm?
Which one? I've lost my place here. Oh, yeah.
See what kind of radio star are you? You can't even keep the place. Jeez.
Yeah, well, I'm old, too, and I have bad eyes.
Alex, you want to say something about his comment about being old?
It happens to everybody. Get used to it.
Yeah, I pretty much already have. No,
so the Border Patrol Union leader reportedly charges a 10-mile stretch of the Arizona border with Mexico was left unmanned for 2 days, allowing 2 vehicles to drive into the United States and escape. Of course, we don't have to worry about terrorists being aboard that because they just don't cross the border, right?
Well, the president of the National Border Patrol Council, testifying for the House Oversight and Government Affairs Committee, said the scariest part of those vehicles entering the United States is we don't know what was in those vehicles or whom, and we have no idea. And, of course, the Obama administration keeps saying, oh, the border's never been more secure. It's no problem. Like the Kip Diller routine. Oh, all is well, all is well.
Yeah. Well, remember what we were saying earlier about everybody getting their hands on nuclear? Yeah, there you go.
Well,
all right. Story.
Seems to me there may have been some, or I would suspect that there might have been some coordination on those 2 trucks, because how did they know it was going to be clear to drive those trucks through?
Yeah, so we got moles. Story number 8: live and let have welfare. The Great Cuba-Obamnesty Tie-In, because nothing says love for communism than sending capitalistic money to a communist country to help them out.
Well, it seems to me that they should distinguish between the Cubans who are willing to put everything on the line to cross the Florida Straits to get to the United States versus going to Ecuador, which Cubans don't need a passport to get to, and then walking up like with the rest of the illegals. I think that's the difference between those seeking political asylum and those just coming here to sponge off the system.
Story number 7, Never Say Never Again, about attacks in Washington, D.C. Gunshots reported at the U.S. Capitol, more specifically the U.S. Capitol Visitors Center. And no, it wasn't a Muslim, but it did show how easily a gunman can get relatively close. But you know what? We've already been told, though, that walls don't work and guns don't defend, so I don't know what they're going to do.
And the remaining stories for the rest of the program on KMET1490AM.com, Constitution Radio, next. See you there.
Constitution is America's owner's manual. Douglas V. Gibbs is America's Constitution Authority, broadcasting live on KMET AM 1490 Saturdays at 1 p.m. And it's time, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, right here on KMET 1490 AM. And I want to once again mention that we have a new advertiser, Wholesale Capital. And so if Sean, if you could be sure to throw their two ads, their ad twice, once in each of the commercial cues, that'd be great. They're going to be sending us a new one, though, because he thinks that the music's a little out on that one. When I say he, I'm talking about the owner, Ed Hoffman. So thank you, Ed Hoffman, for being a sponsor of this radio program, joining All-Star Collision, allstarci.com, constitutionquest.com, Constitution Quest board game. All of you advertisers on this radio program are very important. They're the ones that bring this program to you folks, so give them your business, and I mean that in the nicest way. All right.
Not the business. Your business.
Yeah. Okay. It is time. I have, by the way, right before this program, we go through a bunch of the stories of the week on American Daily Review, and both Jasmine and I had some unpreplanned problems that mine wasn't really a problem. It was a wonderful thing, but that came up, and so the show got started late, so we went through, 16 through 7 in like 45 minutes?
More like 30 minutes.
Yeah, but anyway.
Like a Rolodex,
Yeah, but you can check it out, American Daily Review. It's blogtalkradio.com/American Daily Review. We're down to stories 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 on Constitution Radio. But I went through all these titles, and I asked Alex if he saw what the theme was, and he said no. And then when I told him, he says, well, I picked up on that, but anyway, okay. So Constitution Radio, You Only Live Twice. Story number 17, Casino Royale of Environmentalism. Story number 16, Gun Violence Never Dies. Story number 15, Millennials and Reality. Skyfall, because they can't figure out the difference between socialism and capitalism, but Obama seems to explain it so well to them. Story number 14, A View to a Suicide, more specifically California's suicide, economic suicide. Story number 13, Quantum of Hillary. 12, For Your Gays Only. 11, International License to Kill. Story number 10, The Man with the Golden Agreement. Story number 9, On His Majesty's Final Year. 8, Live and Let Have Welfare. 7, Never Say Never Again, about attacks on Washington, D.C. Sean, have you picked up on what the theme is?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
Sorry, dealing with technical issues. Dealing with technical issues.
James Bond titles, kind of played with the titles. Yes. All right. You know why, right? Because they always try to keep this secret, like the Secret Service, but somehow we find out about this stuff. All right. Jasmine is up there in the Pacific Northwest in the state of Washington. Has joined us through Skype. I have Alex to my right, always to my right. Alex, thank you for being here, sir.
You're welcome.
We're gonna try to give him a little more time on today's book of the week because it's he has come across an epiphany that I think is worth talking about. Story number 6, Golden Desert. Let's see. We talked about this earlier this morning on Conservative Voice Radio. Matter of fact, right here on KMET, 8 a.m. Every 8 a.m. I host Conservative Voice Radio right here on KMET 1490 a.m. and co-hosted and sponsored by the Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party, BBCV, teaparty.net, with my good friends Diane, Jan, and Glenn, and Sam in reverse order. Usually it's the other. And here's what happened. Originally it was reported as 15, but later on CBS says 17 men reported in the middle of, the high desert of Middle Eastern descent, chanting in what sounds like an Arabic tongue with lots of guns, firing off shots at 3 o'clock in the morning, because everybody goes out at 3 a.m. to shoot off shots in the middle of the desert. That just seems to be the way it is, right?
I think Jell-O shots would be preferable, but that's what they seem to enjoy.
Yeah, well, see, here's the thing. You and I earlier talked about, what's crossing the border.
Oh, boy.
And we just had San Bernardino not too long ago. How obvious does it have to get before some of these legislators realize the truth? Some of them do know the truth, but they're betting on it.
Well, the closer it is the closer the level of government is to things like this, the more likely they will be to be responsive to them. For it's the opposite of NIMBYism, or really it is a form of NIMBYism. Not in my backyard. It's like when Ted Kennedy, the late Senator Ted Kennedy, didn't want windmills built near Chappaquiddick or Kennebunkport, excuse me.
But he supports the windmills. Yeah,
it's great for everyone else, not so great for me. Well, it's the same dynamic here. The closer that the jihadists come to home, the more people are going to pay attention to it. I mean, that touches.
I'm going to give you one more NIMBYism. If you remember in San Francisco, there was the city council member who sponsored a bill or a piece of ordinance and supported it and pushed it and it passed that the sidewalk was free game for the homeless to sleep on anywhere. So a conservative activist dressed himself up as a homeless person and slept on the sidewalk in front of the house of this particular city council member. City council member called the police to have him arrested.
For vagrancy, yeah, it's the same thing. Whatever, human nature is human nature. When it adversely affects them, they're going to have a problem with it. It's like something that happened this week during Barack Obama's anti-nuke confab in Washington, D.C. French President Francois Hollande was there, and he was giving and this particular panel was on terrorism.
And this will be story number 5, Islam Raker, by the way.
That's one of them. And Francois Hollande was speaking in French, and the White House, the American contingent and other national contingents had their translators going on in their ears so they could understand what Hollande was saying, because, of course, Barack Obama is only monolingual. And at one point, Francois Hollande, president of France, used the term Islamist terrorism. Now, he didn't say Islamic. He said Islamist terrorism. So,
which to the leftists is usually acceptable because that's to them a differentiation from the rest of the Islamics.
Yeah, but in the White House's case, Barack Obama's case, not good enough. They censored that entire sentence in which President Hollande mentioned the word Islamist terrorism and how we have to stop it and something like that. And now the point being that France has been on the front lines of this of late. Exactly. Paris attacks, and then Brussels. So when it's right up in your face, you have to start taking it more seriously. It's like the Israelis have always taken it seriously because it's been in their face for 60, almost 70 years.
Right.
But Barack Obama, United States, not been quite as much on the front line, and Barack Obama, being as sympathetic as he is to Islam, I'm surprised they even printed the words Islamist terrorism in the transcript, but they censored it from the video.
Well, meanwhile, you got Taliban massacring over 70 persons, likely Christians, ISIS doing it through the Taliban, so to speak. You've got
on Easter Sunday.
On Easter Sunday, yeah. And, you've got, the battle with ISIS, what's going on. You got Brussels. You got, one writer at the Political Pistachio, and I put her article here. She's in Canada, so we don't use her last name because she's afraid of being accused of hate speech.
Yeah, she's got to be. That's.
She's got to be careful, but she believes that ISIS was built by the USA. In a way, it was, and that.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too much into it, but anyway, so you're right. This is over there, and it's something that's happening somewhere else. It's just like, when I was a young man and used to drive 80, 85 miles an hour in my little Toyota Tercel without a seatbelt, what was I worried about getting hurt in an accident? It happens to somebody else until it happened to me.
Exactly.
Suddenly now I've got a whole different view of that because now I've experienced it firsthand. Or it goes back to what I was telling you earlier on American Daily Review about, guns, being educated about guns. Well, as long as they're hearing somebody else's story and other things about guns and how dangerous they are, people have this particular thinking about it. But when they become close and personal and learn and are educated about the importance of it as a tool, it being a firearm, suddenly their perspective changes. Well, your perspective changes when the jihadists are in your backyard. We've had them in our backyard in San Bernardino. We've had them in our backyard in the United States in a number of places. So you have to understand, for some of these people, it's not close enough to their backyard yet. But for others, and I mentioned this earlier, it is a part of what they want. I mean, I seriously believe that Barack Obama has no problem with jihadist attacks on American soil. In fact, I think he hopes for them.
I would say that having watched this man all this time, he's so cold. They talk about how calm and unflappable he is. No drama Obama. I think the guy is a sociopath. I think he just plain doesn't have feelings for other people's suffering at all.
Yeah, another word for that is Muslim.
Okay.
No empathy. I mean, he has his... And it's part of his narcissism. He believes he's absolutely right and everybody else is wrong. And if you don't agree with him, then you're a lower form of human being. And
how much of that has been influenced or affected by his Muslim upbringing or the influence of Islam in his life, along with the influence of communism in his life?
Well, I mean, it's a toxic combination. That's why I refer to him as an Islamo-communist. Because that's pretty much what he is.
Well, and if you read a lot about what happened with Islam and the Ottoman Empire after World War I, the Marxists infiltrated Islam. So Islam is yes, the nuts already because of Muhammad, but then they've infused a lot of communism into it as well. So you take this atom bomb and you just turned it into a nuclear bomb, so to speak.
Well, as I said in my essay, the Combine, not only was what you were talking about just now happening, but the Soviet Empire brought lots of Muslims into the Soviet Empire for 3 and 4 years of training in revolution and running a country once the revolution succeeded. So these people have been indoctrinated thoroughly in Marxism, and what other system are they going to use for all these billions of dollars that they're grabbing? I don't think Bank of America wants to register them.
When we return to Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, from Trump with love, the presidency is not enough, the Trump who loved me. So we'll be talking a little bit about Trump and The Big Short when we come back.
The true patriots of All-Star Collision have been proudly serving the Inland Empire for over 20 years. Built on honesty, integrity, quality, and old-fashioned customer service, we offer lifetime warranties for our work, and every vehicle serviced by All-Star Collision is washed, detailed, the headlights polished, fluids are checked and topped off, safety checked, and returned in showroom condition. We offer free estimates, are approved by major insurance companies, and accept all claims for all cars and trucks. We use computerized frame straightening to factory specifications, offer fiberglass body repair and paint, free local pickup and delivery, and after-hours towing. Mention this radio program at drop-off and receive $100 off or a free rental car for up to 5 days during your repair. Visit us at allstarci.com or at 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Call us at 951-279-9161. We are the kings of wreck and roll.
The spirit of Paul Revere is alive and well and broadcasting on KMET AM 1490. Constitutionalist Douglas V. Gibbs hosts a roundtable of local citizens through local, state, and national issues every Saturday at 8 a.m. Thomas Jefferson said, "We in America do not have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who participate." So, participate. Listen to Conservative Voice Radio every Saturday at 8 a.m. and join Paul Revere's modern Ride for Liberty. Conservative Voice Radio on KMET 1490 AM is brought to you every Saturday at 8 a.m. by Antonia's Pizza, located in Cherry Valley Realty, and the Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party. What's your constitutional IQ? Your quest to learn the Constitution can be fun for the whole family. Learn about the Constitution as you play the Constitution Quest board game. Learn more at constitutionquest.com.
Hi, this is Ed Hoffman, President Wholesale Capital Corporation, your direct mortgage lender. Real estate prices are still low, which means now's the time to buy your next home before they go up. Whether it's a home to live in, a vacation house, or an investment property, we can meet your mortgage financing needs to help you realize the next phase of your American dream. At Wholesale Capital Corporation, we make sure you get a loan that you can afford with terms that work for you. Wholesale Capital welcomes FHA buyers, conventional buyers, jumbo loan buyers, and we proudly help the U.S. military veterans take advantage of the zero down payment VA loan program. Nobody treats veterans better than Wholesale Capital Corporation. Seniors, if you're interested in creating an additional stream of income or just making your mortgage payment go away with a reverse mortgage, Wholesale Capital would love to help you. To speak with a loan officer who has your best interests in mind, call Wholesale Capital at 855-640-2020. That's area code 855-640-2020. Wholesale Capital Corporation, where we can close.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Our records indicate you've been lied to. Welcome to the truth. Douglas V. Gibbs.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Segment number 2, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs on KMET 1490 AM, KMET1490am.com, DouglasVGibbs.com, PoliticalPistachio.com, and tonight, ConstitutionAssociation.com. We are having Constitution Quest game night. We are going to break the room into groups, and we're going to play the game. I have promised, though, that I am not going to join any team. We want this to be fair. So, but ConstitutionQuest.com, learn more about the game. Come tonight at Myrna's Cafe, 26850 Cherry Hills Boulevard in Menifee, right off of McCall and Interstate 215. Myrna's used to be Boston Billy's. Join us tonight. No cost to get in, but we ask that you buy dinner because the restaurant lets us use their banquet room for free, so be sure to buy dinner right there at Myrna's Cafe. I want to see you there, and I'll have my books for sale. So if you've been wanting to buy my book, get my autograph and all that jazz, I'll be there. So 5 o'clock tonight, Saturday night, April 2nd, 2016. Okay. Did you see the former Mexican Trump employee reveal the truth about Trump's racism?
No.
You didn't watch the video? Yeah, she said she was his executive assistant, Mexican woman, worked for him for 2 years, and when it came to his racism, man, she said there's not a racist bone in his body. He was a pleasure to work for. He's a family man, and she thinks he'd make a great president. Now, that said, women voters don't seem to agree. The pollsters the polls are just going for Trump of late. Washington Post writer wrote, the Republicans are finally seeing the truth about Trump. That may or may not be true. I don't know. The guy's a wild card. But the Wisconsin primary Republican race, he's in trouble. Now, here's the question, though, before you start talking.
Yeah,
Cruz, I was looking at something. I can't remember what it was. It was said that Cruz needs to get like 85% of the remaining delegates if he were to get the majority.
Before the convention.
Before the convention. Number one. Number two, if it does go to convention, it's a contested convention, Trump's in trouble because he doesn't have the ground game that Cruz has. Cruz has lawyers and people involved, already talking to delegates, all that jazz. So what's your thought?
Well, yeah, I mean, see, that's really it's kind of a make or break thing for Trump. Now, one of the things that people forget, and it hasn't been mentioned in his $2 billion worth of free media over the past 9 months, he's built up this reputation. He's a winner. He always wins. He's success. And I'm leading in the polls. Did you see I'm leading in the polls? And on and on. But he's led in the polls, but not had a majority even of the Republican vote. He's won not quite.
Yeah, so he's not been the clear-cut leader. He's been the leader, but not the clear-cut leader.
So the thought is that the assumption with Trump supporters is that, well, he'll bring in all these disaffected white voters, white working class voters, and so forth, what used to be known as the Reagan Democrats. But
he has brought some of them in, but not
some, but not but to offset the numbers you mentioned that he's underwater with women. Underwater as in 23% favorable, 70% unfavorable. And it's even worse with millennials and Hispanics and so forth. I mean, in fact, one poll did an analysis where they tried to figure out, okay, if Trump registered every single white working class voter, white male working class voter in the country, his core constituency, and got them all out to vote, and they voted for Trump 100%, based on the rest of the electorate being as the polls are showing it is, that would only get him back to maybe a dead heat. And of course, we know how elections turn out in this country when it's a dead.
We have to remember when it comes to elections too. It's not really what the majority of people in the country think. It's the majority of the people who participate think. First of all, second of all, I think Trump has realized this a little bit because, according to the Federalist, he's hired a political insider for the convention fight, so he sees it coming. But by doing that, it's also not only showing that he is trying to prepare in a good way from his point of view, but it also shows that he's realizing that he may not get that what is it, 1273?
1237.
1237. There goes the dyslexia.
Go ahead.
Taking him off my radar screen as a contender because I think he's self-destructing right before us.
Well, sure he is.
But the problem is that his voters are volatile. They're
that's what you see. That's not necessarily completely true across the board, but I think in a sense they are. But remember also who you're watching, the media. So
I think a lot of them though are going to take their ballot and go home. I'm hoping that some of that they'll just go ahead and switch over to Ted Cruz.
Well, they have to, because if they don't, see, here's the thing. Here's been my frustration with these two candidates: is it's been so bloody between them that whichever one gets it, they're not going to get the vote of the other one, and they need the vote of the other one in order to beat Hillary.
Yeah.
Well,
we have to have some, whoever it is, there has to be a unite, behind that particular person, and we're not seeing it. And I'm going to tell you right now, if Hillary gets in there, it's more than just a crappy economy. I mean, we've got a possibility of up to 4, Supreme Court, nominations. You might as well kiss the Constitution goodbye. Now that said, when it comes to Trump in particular, even our U.S. allies are nervous about him. I mean, you've got a lot of people out there are real nervous because he has this because he is a businessman, and he's shown that he really doesn't understand politics as much as he thought he would. He keeps treating it like it's business, and it's a different animal. There's a fearfulness, and I said this from the very beginning, that very likely he could be a Republican version of Obama in the sense of going around Congress and all that. And there's a lot of fear of that iron-fisted manhandling of the American system.
The man is a case study in unintended consequences. He understands things so poorly and at such a surface level that he goes off. He as a blowhard and a bully, he goes off and makes some pronouncement. And the next thing you know, there's 16 different repercussions.
Is it possible for him to learn on the job?
Yeah, but he hasn't got much time, and I don't think he's going to.
Well, the abortion thing, for example, it's like, and I'm sorry to interrupt there, Jim. It's like with the abortion thing, and that's actually the next story in the next story. But it's like with that abortion answer, that was not the answer of necessarily an arrogant Trump as much as it was the answer of an inexperienced political pundit or
he
politician.
He thought that's what pro-life people think.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. And that's a lot of the inexperience. But now, so then that makes you ask the question: is he pro-life, or is he trying to prove to pro-life people he's pro-life?
But you cannot unring a bell. He's already said what he said, and he's alienated that huge part of the population.
Well, and Ben Carson gave him the benefit of the doubt, but that may not have been enough.
Well, that's Ben Carson's particular cross to bear. He's debasing and embarrassing himself.
And story number 3, presidency is not enough. I mean, he's naming healthcare and education as being among the federal government's primary whatever.
We're really tossing a salad, and I'm getting left behind here. The thing with Trump, and this is the thing that I don't think it ever occurred to him before, because I think that Trump, being a supreme narcissist, has always thought that everybody hung at every word he said. But that's not actually true. But what he's finding out, I hope he's finding out, is that when you run for president and you're the front runner and you are even possibly the next president of the United States, when you say things, the rest of the world pays attention. He's never had that level of accountability before. So when he goes and says, well, we should withdraw from NATO.
So once again, is he going to learn from that? Can he learn?
Same thing with Japan and South Korea. He said, well, Japan and South Korea, they should build their own nuclear weapons. And they're going, what? I mean, Japan has it's in their constitution that they don't have nuclear weapons, that they don't have offensive military capability, and yet he's saying these things, and it's like our allies are just going, well, this guy could be the next president of the United States. Oh, good grief! Can
he be taught? Can he surround himself with enough people to fix that problem?
Well, that's another question, because
that goes back to what I've been saying all along. He's a wild card. You don't know.
He said just this week that successful people surround themselves with unsuccessful people, which, by the way, is not always stupid, but it's the opposite of what he told Ben Carson that he would do once he became president in order to get Carson's endorsement. So, I mean, I think that Donald Trump, being the supreme narcissist he is, I think he knows everything. I don't think he's willing to learn. They call George W. Bush incurious. I mean, that's why Trump is playing catch up on this convention delegate recruitment and getting your own people elected as delegates. I mean, Cruz is way ahead of him on that. That's why he's looking at, if he doesn't win the nomination on the first ballot, he's going to lose. He will be done. And the reason is because he was too arrogant and lazy to do his homework.
Okay, now, story number 3, presidency is not enough. I've been talking to a lot of Trump supporters because I'm trying to get the feel, because, when I talk about the Trump supporters, I understand why they have felt the way they have felt. I've not necessarily condoned it, but I understand it. And so I've been talking to a lot of these Trump supporters, and here's what I'm finding. In the beginning, they supported him because he was the stick in the spokes. He was the bigger hammer in the rock yard. That's what they want, because they're ticked off at the political establishment, the machine, and they want to bust up the machine, even if it takes someone who's not so conservative. The thing is, though, is as time is advancing and he's saying more and more things and they're learning more and more about him, and he says things like, in story number 3, that healthcare and education is among the top federal, which it is totally unconstitutional. And he's been doubling down on his Ted Cruz smears and, and saying other stupid stuff about nuclear weapons and so on and so forth. These Trump supporters are dropping off like flies, because even though they wanted that bigger hammer, they've realized this bigger hammer is not wielded by someone as conservative as they had hoped. And so perhaps the Washington Post writer is right. These people are learning what some of these other people knew all along. And once again, I've always kind of tried to play, very more of an objective point of view here. But the question is, as this all drops off and all these Trump supporters begin to feel disillusioned, is there enough time for Cruz or Karl Rove or the GOP or whoever to save the day? Is there enough time?
There's nothing to be done with Trump, if that's what you're asking. My feeling is the man is a blowhard and a buffoon through and through. And Alistair Cook one time did a talk on people who have the talent to make money are just like people who have the talent to make music. It's a special prodigy kind of thing that doesn't relate to other sorts of intelligence. The guy can make lots of money, but he's a total dork.
So it can't be transferred from business world to the political world. It takes a special talent for politics.
I will tell you what, talking about the Trump. See, he that interview where he said that education and healthcare are two of the ought to be two of the federal government's top priorities. That interview was a complete word salad. I mean, he started out by saying security, healthcare, and education, and then he said, "Well, no, it's security, security, and security." And then he said, and you had to feel sorry for Anderson Cooper because he was trying to make sense of all this as he's going through this. And every time he tries to clarify, the answer changes. And then he asked, "Well, I thought that you said it's in your platform that education should not be a federal responsibility." And then he said, "Well, no, it shouldn't be, but we got to get rid of Common Core, but move it down to the state level." Well, is he getting rid of Common Core, or is he moving it down to the state level? I mean, nobody could make any sense of what he was saying, and I'll tell you the reason why that was because Trump didn't know what to say.
He's trying to interpret conservatism, and that doesn't mean he is. And he's trying to interpret constitutionalism, but it doesn't mean he is.
But he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's like when you don't study for a test, and then you go and you take the test, and oh no, what do I do? And then you start guess. That's what he was doing. He was making things up you could almost hear the wheels turning in his mind. Oh crap, what do I say now? And healthcare, education, security. He didn't know what he was talking about. He's a mile wide and an inch deep.
I will say this: a couple times a week, I send emails to both the Cruz camp and the Trump camp offering my services. So far, I've never gotten a response. All right, story number 2: the Trump who loved me.
Like Cruz would need any help.
Yeah, he would. Hillary Clinton's backers are saying that Ben Carson is supporting Trump because Trump has illegally offered him a position in his cabinet.
Oh, no. Round up all the usual suspects.
Well,
in other words, that's politics as usual. Yeah.
Sounds that way to me. There's gambling going on in here?
Maybe a little extortion, yeah. No, not in the political realm. We know all those guys are honest.
They referred it to the Justice Department. This was a David Brock-supported organization. You know, David Brock, the Mrs. Doubtfire of politics. Either that or he wears the same powdered wig that Captain Barbosa did in On Stranger Tides. But he's behind this. And it's been referred to the Justice Department. They asked, I think it was the American Democracy Legal Fund, and they've asked the Justice Department to investigate this because that would be against 18 United States Code Section 599. But, I mean, now, did that actually take place? Who knows? That's the point of an investigation.
Nobody knows except for Ben, Trump, and any gnats that were in the room.
But
Trump
it's entirely plausible. It's entirely plausible. I can believe it.
Well, politicians, businessmen, anything's possible.
I didn't say possible. I said plausible.
Plausible, and there's all kinds of other words I could throw in there, but those I don't use to mix company. Trump campaign manager Lewandowski, I think is his name, who had been charged with Michelle Field's battery. Video has come out, and it's not necessarily matching Michelle's story. However, it doesn't necessarily match Corey's story either. According to Ms. Fields, she was thrown to practically thrown to the ground. She was thrown down, and it was battery. And according to him, he had never touched her. Well,
that's not what he said right after it happened. The first 2 days after it happened, he admitted it.
He never touched her. Right after it happened, he said he thought she was a member of the enemy mainstream media. But nonetheless, her charge is wrong. His isn't exactly accurate, but what I'm trying to get to at this is such a highly charged election season. People are looking for reasons to go after this campaign, that person, that is it possible that some of these confrontations are being exaggerated in a deceitful manner to try to make one look better than the other? And I know, before you stomp all over me, Doug, welcome to the election season. Yes, I know that's normal, but in this one, I think it's even more charged than usual. And I think that this kind of thing, where there's a little bit of deception, is even more possible.
The only deception is coming from Trump. This whole thing could have been, first of all, Lewandowski could just simply have kept his hands to himself because they had security right there, so he didn't have to do anything. Second of all, as soon as he grabbed her, he could have just apologized, said, "I'm sorry, I got carried away," because these are the kind of criminal charges that are filed by people who get angry, who get alienated by if the person that grabbed them, in this case Corey Lewandowski, are not repentant. That's where this came from. And then, like I say, Lewandowski admitted that he didn't know he had grabbed Michelle Fields specifically, but he had grabbed somebody and it turned out to be Michelle Fields, and he admitted it. And then 2 days later, he changed his mind. He recanted it. He started calling her a liar and delusional. And then Trump, I'll guarantee you it's because Trump got in his ear and said, "No, fight back. We can't let them get this advantage on us." So something that could have been easily diffused.
Well, the thing is, though, is I think she did. I think she did take it out of proportion, because if you look at, there's two videos here. In the second video, when you look at her, she didn't flinch. She didn't change her facial expression when it was happening. She didn't even notice Lewandowski during the incident. So
that's not what Ben Terrace of the Washington Post said, who was
I
saw the whole thing.
That's what I saw in a video. There's two videos out there. But anyway, okay.
And the bruises on her forearm, did she give herself those bruises? I don't think so.
Well, some people bruise easily. She could have self-inflicted them. That's plausible. That's plausible. Or he did grip too tight. Absolutely, that's very possible. He gripped her tighter than he should have and caused bruises. I mean, there's a number of possibilities. But did he pull her down practically to the ground? Video says no. Now, did he treat her gingerly? Well, video also says no. So he's not a saint either. That's what I'm getting at. So I think in both cases we have an exaggeration. All right. When we return after the break, The Big Short, connection to communism and the radical in chief, presented by Alex Ferguson to my right, and The GOP Never Dies, story number 1. Oh, boy. Don't go anywhere.
You got a dent in your door, a scratch in your fender, or a scratch in your door and a dent in your fender. If you need auto detailing, if you need fire shooting decals on the side of your car, if you need a rally stripe right down the middle of your hardtop, I don't care what it is. The Patriots at All-Star Collision are the place you want to go. They're the only place to go. 522 Railroad Street in Corona. Web address allstarci.com to see all that they do and what they're all about. Phone number 951-279-9161. All-Star Collision, the kings of rock and roll.
Conservative Voice Radio on KMET 1490 AM is brought to you every Saturday at 8 a.m. by Antonia's Pizza, located in Cherry Valley Realty, and the Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party.
We are the socialists. You will be assimilated. Your individual liberties, personal freedoms, and mental individuality will be added to our own. Resistance is futile.
Hi, this is Ed Hoffman, President, Wholesale Capital Corporation, your direct mortgage lender. Real estate prices are still low, which means now's the time to buy your next home before they go up. Whether it's a home to live in, a vacation house, or an investment property, we can meet your mortgage financing needs to help you realize the next phase of your American dream. At Wholesale Capital Corporation, we make sure you get a loan that you can afford with terms that work for you. Wholesale Capital welcomes FHA buyers, conventional buyers, jumbo loan buyers, and we proudly help the U.S. military veterans take advantage of the zero down payment VA loan program. Nobody treats veterans better than Wholesale Capital Corporation. Seniors, if you're interested in creating an additional stream of income or just making your mortgage payment go away with a reverse mortgage, Wholesale Capital would love to help you. To speak with a loan officer who has your best interests in mind, call Wholesale Capital at 855-640-2020. That's area code 855-640-2020. Wholesale Capital Corporation, where we can close.
I almost want to sort of get like a UFC, ring announcer. It's time for the battle royale here at the studio at KMET 1490 AM. I am Douglas V. Gibbs, your host here on Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. Jim Jasmine Sondergeld from way up there in the state of Washington, who also writes on politicalpistachio.com. In fact, writes more than I do of late. So the site's all messed up. No, I'm kidding. He's doing a bang-up job, and I do a bang-up job, and Alex does a bang-up job. Alex is to my right, and we also have a couple of other writers. Alan McNew, which I love it when he sends what he has. He has a certain snarkiness, doesn't he? Do you like Alan McNew's snarkiness?
Yeah, snark is good. Yeah, snark is good. I mean, I why should I have to shoulder the whole load? You're the straight man, so.
Yeah, and then we got Anita in Canada. So those are our writers over there at, and every once in a while Bonnie will send us a story. So we got a few writers. We like more. You need to be a good constitutional, conservative, Christian writer to be on our site. In other words, everything that makes the left mad. All right, Alex, you came to an epiphany about your radical in chief and The Big Short. That's about the crash, right?
Right. What happened was I was knee deep in reading this book, Radical in Chief by Stanley Kurtz, and I saw a promo for the movie The Big Short, which, by the way, is a charming.
Yeah.
And I saw that the connection was undeniable. You got the radical in chief, the people that knew him in college, the only ones that'll talk. They're saying, yeah, he was a Marxist and he was a revolutionary Marxist. We find that these community organizers, through the process of time, that is a synonym for communist revolutionary. That's who they are. And we can see it going back in time. What happened was that they listened to Saul Alinsky about these community organizations. They looked at the 1930s Communist Party having front groups and hiding behind those names. So you never hear them say socialist. And of course, a socialist is a Marxist, and Marx's philosophy was communism. But you never get to that kind of reality with them. They're constantly hiding behind these groups. But what happened was that they infiltrated board meetings and banks and financial institutions and made them appoint some slug in their group to be part of the board. They got into government. They got grants from government. They got grants from capitalist institutions. They laugh about how they are getting the capitalists to fund the revolution. Okay? Well, one of their biggest accomplishments was a thing called the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977. And the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency says that this thing, here's what it's supposed to do. Prohibits redlining, that is the denying or increasing of the cost of banking to residents of racially defined neighborhoods, and encourages efforts to meet the credit needs of all community members, including residents of low and moderate income neighborhoods. Now, what that means is that for hundreds and thousands of years, lenders who survive have always checked to see if the borrower can repay his debts. Here, the Reds they demanded and legislated loans to people who cannot repay. When the officers realized that they could, the loan officers realized that they could make endless commissions, they just naturally went wild. And that's what this movie, The Big Short, is all about, is all the repercussions of this insanity. But they barely touch on why all of these mortgages are going underwater. And they're going underwater because the government was embarrassed and pressured and stigmatized to the point where they turned the whole capitalist system upside down. And a guy named Luis Ranieri, he figured out that if you take all these bum mortgages that people can't pay back and put them in a package and call them a bond, you can sell that bond, and the money just comes rolling on in.
Yeah, they're called mortgage-based securities.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, or CDOs at some rotten point. Mm-hmm. So what happens is that $5 trillion was lost in 2008. Not taken by somebody, just totally lost. That's pension money, real estate funds, 401ks, savings, bonds. 8 million people lost their jobs. 6 million people lost their homes. And they claim that for every 1% that the unemployment goes up, 40,000 people die. Okay? Now, all of this was predictable. All of this was inevitable. And then you look at the community organizers. They're saying they want the system to collapse. That's what they say in their own paperwork. They talk a lot about them in Radical in Chief. They talk a lot about Michael Harrington. It turns out now he's the guy who set up the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA. He's the guy that does the third way, not violent revolution. Well, they at some meeting, they cornered him and they said, "What about violent revolution?" And he finally conceded, "Yeah, if that's what it takes, we got to do violent revolution." So we got
exasperating.
This is more than just exasperating. Austin Goolsbee on Hannity said that that's only that act was only 1/3 of the problem because it only regulates banks. But these people are not just dealing; they're like termites. They're everywhere.
Well, the thing is, now it is under the Obama administration. They are doing exactly what they claimed was the problem all over again.
That's the next point. There's a thing called bespoke tranches opportunity, and in the movie they say we deliberately make up these kinds of terms so that you don't understand what the hell's going on. Bespoke tranches opportunities are the same kind of financial instrument that got us into a crash in 2008. They're the same as the CDOs. They're subprime loans in which the people are not required to have a high FICA. They don't have to have a job. Sometimes they register the home and the mortgage in their dog's name. They had an example of that in the movie. So as a consequence,
a friend of mine has 6 dogs, but they're all registered as Democrats.
Well,
are they alive or dead?
The point is that the Obama administration is following Pivens and Cloward. Mm-hmm. They're bankrupting the system deliberately. And here in the movie, everybody is watching the movie can't believe that people are so stupid they didn't realize what was being done to them.
And it's happening again right now.
And it's happening right now. This guy has doubled the national debt. Nobody seems to care. This guy has started another mortgage crisis on purpose. He knows what he's doing. Everybody knows what the movie talked about it. But it's still going on. We are so complacent in this country. They said in the movie that people don't like to have to deal with unpleasant subjects, so they just ignore threats.
Well, they have the distraction of making a living that they don't want to be involved or even care, just as long as things don't change.
So we are in deep, deep doo-doo. And my problem again is Michelle Obama says Obama does not consider himself a president. He considers himself a community organizer, and he's looking to see what advantage he can establish for community organizers as president. And I'm saying that I'm scared to death that this guy is not going to let go easily at the end of his term.
What you said about what Michelle Obama has said, that's one of the few things he has said that has been honest.
Oh, yeah. And also that there was the first time she was ever proud of her country.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. As for that friend of mine, he said that his father had voted Republican in his entire life till after he had passed away, and then he started voting Democrat. So to offset that, he has registered all of his dogs Democrat, but they vote Republican. So, there you go. Okay.
So they're all in the doghouse.
Well, they became Republicans when they opened their eyes.
Yeah. Story number 1: the GOP never dies. Karl Rove says that the GOP establishment's coming to the rescue. Are we talking through the convention?
Well, he was being interviewed on the Hugh Hewitt program the other day, and apparently Hugh Hewitt asked him about, well, is there any other possibilities besides Trump or Cruz? And boy, that just set off the verbal diarrhea. He went up waxed lyrical about, oh yes, we could parachute in all kinds of people who haven't campaigned and haven't collected a single primary or caucus vote. I mean, with Cruz, you're going to have a third of the GOP alienated. With Trump, you're going to have a third of the GOP alienated. If you sweep both of them aside and drop in Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, whoever, I mean, you're going to have the whole party that's alienated. It would be an utter and absolute disaster.
And meanwhile, we've got Donald Trump's falling apart. You were fascinating. Said, could Ted Cruz be the tortoise and Donald Trump the hare? I think that's a fitting analogy.
Well, that gets back to the whole delegate thing. You know, I mean, Trump hasn't done his homework, hasn't made the connections and got his own people elected as delegates and so forth. So if Trump doesn't get 1237 on the first ballot in Cleveland, he's most likely done.
Well, here's something that we had said earlier, though, is that in order for Cruz to win against Hillary, he needs to get Trump supporters. The way he does that is he convinces him he's also one that can stick a stick in the spokes of the political machine.
Well,
he has to convince, and you know what? He kind of always has been that guy.
I know.
So, you know, it's fascinating. Okay, we're out of time, so plug yourself.
blogtalkradio.com/HSR Network. I host the Hard Starboard Radio Network podcast, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday, and I write at politicalpistachio.com.
conservativecannonade.org. The new stuff is coming online. I'm telling you, my 18-page opus is the best damn poem you've ever read. Get on the site, go to more published letters, go to the very bottom. It's down there, and it's worth reading. It's real literature, people.
And my name is Douglas V. Gibbs, DouglasVGibbs.com. United we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. We'll see you tonight at 5 p.m. at Myrna's Cafe at the Constitution Association monthly meeting. Constitution Quest game night, ConstitutionQuest.com, ConstitutionAssociation.com. We'll see you tonight, or we'll see you next week. See you then.